Hello BookTube and welcome to the 2020 tour of my library. I'm going to start with the still Paltry poetry collection. I had intended on starting with the cookbooks and the art books, but since they are in the kitchen living room, I was going to film in there, but the filming locations I had for the cookbooks did not quite work. Either every time I moved my head, you would be blinded by a kitchen light, or the where I had the tablet that I film on would have been threatened by falling over. So hopefully I can move the filming to the kitchen table, and that'll work. And if I do, then I might have some tags up tomorrow too, but otherwise it'll just be the library tour for the foreseeable future, except for weekly reads. Anyway, so let's get started. So the first book I'm going to show is Word of Mouth, an anthology of gay American poetry edited by Timothy Liu. I've had this book for nearly 20 years. My first time I ever went to Austin and to Book People, I picked this up. It is an amazing anthology with numerous gay American poets, including Mark Wunderlich, David Trinidad, Jack Spicer, Frank O'Hara, James Merrill, Wayne Kostenbaum, Edward Field, Justin Chin, Rafael Campo, Edgar Bowers, James Broughton, and so on and so forth. And I've loved this book ever since I've had it, although it has been quite a while since I've read it last, and I really probably should have another go at it. And it has introduced me to so many poets that have amazed me. David Trinidad, Edward Field, Robert Duncan, Frank O'Hara, so on and so forth. So yes, definitely a great book. Next is The Changing Light at Sandover by James Merrill. This is his modern epic poem that he wrote over the course of several decades, and it is amazing. I haven't read it in quite some time. I became a fan of James Merrill's work in via a literature class. I took a modern American poetry class, and I just was fascinated by James Merrill, and I had his collected poetry, and eventually also picked this up too. Used copy from, I think, Barnes and Noble. Next is the Go-Go Boy Sonnets by Edmund Miller. These are rather classical sonnets written lovingly to the young men of the New York go-go scene in the very early 2000s. I quite like the collection. It's been forever since I've had it or read it. It's I think it came out like 2003, 2004, maybe 2005 at the latest. But it is fantastic. Really probably should give it another reread. Next is Counting Myself Lucky, Selected Poems 1963 to 1992 by Edward Field. Edward Field is one of my favorite poets. I used to have two other collections by him, Variety Photoplays and Stars in My Eyes, which I sadly no longer have, but really would love to have back in my collection. Field's work is very personal and also very pop culture referenced, particularly the poems from Variety Photoplays and Stars in My Eyes. And they are very amazing. My favorite poem of his is Like Whatever Happened to Me, Caspar, Stars in My Eyes, and so forth. So yes, really love his work. Next is Sappho, translated by Mary Barnard. which really should be with the classics. I don't know why I forgot to move her to the classics, but I did. So really, and I mean, these are really wonderful nuggets of fragmentary poetry, which is really all we have of Sappho's work, sadly. Next is Voluntary Servitude by Mark Wunderlich. This is a collection of poems that came out in the early 2000s, and I have had this book previously and really enjoyed it, and I'm quite happy to have it back in my collection. I reread it this year, and it is quite fantastic. Can't tell where this copy was originally bought from, though, because I got it used from Libris. Next is View with a Grain of Sand, selected poems by Wisława Zaborska. She won the 1996 Nobel Prize in Literature, and her work is amazing. Next is The Dream of the Unified Field by selected poems 1974 to 1994 by Jory Graham. This is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize in, I want to say, 1996. Jory Graham is one of those poets that I had this collection when I was younger, and I quite enjoyed it, but I've since unhauled it, and I've been looking forward to having it back, and quite happy to have it back. When I reread it shortly after I rehauled it, I quite enjoyed it. It is still an amazing collection of poetry. Next, I have a new book that I bought just this past month. Map Collected and Last Poems by Wisława Zaborska. I hauled it last month and quite looking forward to getting to it. Now we have some big chunkster collections. The collected poetry of Nikki Giovanni, 1968 to 1999. I recently picked this up this year and loved every moment of this collection. It is just fantastic. And Giovanni is one of my favorite poets. Particularly, there's this one poem I read, I don't remember if it was in high school or middle school, that just struck me. And it's been with me ever since. Next is SOS, Poems 1961 to 2013 by Amiri Baraka. A fantastic collection of his work. Some of the unpublished material and some of the songs from early in his career are a little bit shaky, but for the most part, I quite liked this collection. And finally, probably my favorite poet, the selected poetry of Robinson Jeffers, which is a collection I've had before. I think I picked it up from Barnes & Noble shortly after I graduated from college, and then unhauled, that annoyingly, but quite happy to have this back, and looking forward to finally reading it sometime in the new year. So that was the still Paltry poetry collection. Will I add to these books in the coming month in 2020? I don't know. But for now, that was that part of the, right now I'm working on the upper wall shelf. So I'll be back in a few minutes with H. Rider Haggard and the classic reprints. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.